Pre-algebra lesson 78, opposites. This will be a pretty quick lesson. So opposites are kind of the logical application for negative numbers. So let's go up here and explain this diagram. So 2 can be read as 2, whereas negative 2, we could also read it as the opposite of 2. Let me explain this using a number line. So why in the world is negative 2 the opposite of 2? Well, if we have a number line, we have 0, and then we have the number 2, and over here we have negative 2. We can see that they are opposites on the number line, right? So by adding a negative in front of 2, that would lead us to the opposite, right? So what we see is this chain where if we were to put a negative in front of 2, right, that would make it the opposite. Now, the vice versa, if we have something like this right here, negative, negative 2, that would be the opposite of 2. So negative 2 being the opposite of 2, the opposite would be like another negative. So the opposite of the opposite would be positive 2. And this chain will just continue every single time we add a negative number. So what we can see here on this example is we've got 2, and that's just going to be the number 2. Whereas the opposite of 2 is going to be negative 2. The opposite of 2 is going to be positive 2. The opposite of 2 will be negative 2. The opposite of 2 will be positive 2. Right? So the trend here is that if we have an odd number of minus signs, that's going to give us a negative number. If we have 2 or an even number, that's going to give us a positive number. And that's the fast rule that we're going to remember, which is if we have to figure out what this number is, we'll count the minus signs. If it's an odd number, we know it's going to end up being a negative number. If it's an even number, like here, 1, 2, 3, 4, we know it will be positive. And that's how we're going to solve our problems. Now let's go straight to the practice. All right, so these are the practice problems we'll see. We've got the opposite of 4. The fast way to remember this, again, two negatives make a positive, or the even numbers, right? So what I could do is I can say, hey, 2 negatives make a positive, so that's going to be plus, that's going to be plus, and I'm left with negative 4, right? So that's the answer. Over here, I've got negative, 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 negative 7. Well, that turns into a plus because they pair up. And these two also turn into a plus, so the final answer is going to be positive 7, right? And that falls in line with my even odd number logic. Now, let's do a difficult one. All right, now I've got a combination of positives and negatives. So if I just remember 2 negatives make a positive, I can add these 2, make them positive, right? Or not, sorry, not add, multiply. And then, let's see here, I've only got 1 negative left, so the final answer is going to be negative 5. Now, some of you may be wondering, like, hey, what about all these extra plus signs? Don't they do anything? And the answer is no. If we were to apply our positive-negative multiplication rules, we would see that anytime we have a negative times a positive, we get a negative. So this negative would make that negative, and then we'd have 1 negative times a positive, which would make another negative, and then that would all turn into a negative. And the negative is going to win in multiplication every time. So the positives don't really change anything, but 2 negatives do, and 1 negative does. All right, so that's it for this lesson. If you guys have any questions, let me know on the school website.